The grease from the fryer clung to my skin like a second layer, mixing with the sweat that had been pooling at the base of my neck for the past 6 hours. I could smell it on myself, that particular blend of old cooking oil, desperation, and the faint trace of the lavender soap I'd used that morning, now completely overpowered. My feet screamed inside my worn sneakers, the left one held together by duct tape I'd carefully hidden beneath the laces. Nobody looked at waitresses anyway. We were ghosts who refilled coffee and cleared plates, invisible unless something went wrong. "Table 12 needs water," Denise barked from behind the bar, not even looking up from the glasses she was polishing. Her voice had that sharp edge it always got during the dinner rush at Vincenzo's, the kind of upscale Italian restaurant where I didn't belong even as staff. The chandeliers overhead cost more than I'd make in a year, maybe 2. I grabbed the pitcher, my fingers trembling slightly. 3 hours of sleep didn't mix well with a double shift, but rent was due in 4 days, and I was still $200 short. The number haunted me, appearing behind my eyelids every time I blinked. $200. It might as well have been $2 million. The dining room hummed with the particular frequency of wealth, quiet conversations, the soft clink of silverware on porcelain. Laughter that never got too loud. I navigated between tables like I was invisible, which mostly I was, until I wasn't. Table 12 sat in the corner, the best spot in the house, the one Mr. Vincenzo reserved for special guests. I'd been avoiding it all night, some instinct telling me to stay away. But Denise had insisted. As I approached, the air seemed to shift, growing heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. 3 men occupied the table, but only one mattered. He sat with his back to the wall, of course he did, in a suit that looked like it cost more than my entire life. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to shoulders that suggested he knew his way around violence even if his hands were currently folded calmly on the white tablecloth. Those hands caught my attention first. Clean, manicured, but with scars across the knuckles that told stories I didn't want to hear. A watch glinted at his wrist, the kind I'd only seen in magazine advertisements. But it was his face that made my breath catch. Sharp angles, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes so dark they looked black in the dim lighting. He couldn't have been more than 35, but he carried himself with an authority that made him seem ageless. Dangerous. There was something leonine about him, predatory, like he was constantly calculating the exact moment to strike. A scar traced a thin line from his left eyebrow to his temple, another story I didn't want to know. "Water?" I managed, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. He didn't look at me immediately. One of the other men, thick-necked, with a bulge under his jacket that I tried very hard not to identify, leaned in and whispered something. The man in gray nodded once, a gesture so slight it barely qualified as movement. Then those black eyes found mine. The world tilted. I'd never believed in that romance novel nonsense about time-stopping or heart-skipping beats. But something fundamental shifted in that moment. His gaze was heavy, weighted, like he could see through my uniform and my carefully constructed walls straight into the part of me that was terrified and exhausted and hanging on by a thread. "Yes," he said, his voice low and smooth, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, maybe, but softened by years of something else. Water would be fine. I poured with shaking hands, hyper-aware of his eyes on me. Don't spill, don't. A drop hit the tablecloth. "I'm so sorry," I breathed, grabbing my cloth napkin to dab at it. "Leave it." Not harsh, but absolute. The kind of voice that didn't expect to be questioned. I froze, napkin halfway to the table. "What's your name?" he asked. This wasn't normal. Guests didn't ask servers their names at Vincenzo's. We were part of the furniture, elegant and forgettable. "Emma," I whispered. "Emma Chen." Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "Emma," he repeated, like he was tasting my name. "You've been on your feet too long." It wasn't a question. Heat crept up my neck. Could he tell? Could he see the way I was subtly shifting my weight, trying to ease the burning in my arches? "I'm fine, sir." "Dante," he corrected. "And you're not fine. Your left shoe is damaged." Mortification flooded through me. I wanted to sink through the floor, to disappear into the expensive carpet and never resurface. It's nothing. Can I get you anything else? Sit down." "I can't." Sit. Firmer now. The man to his right, the thick-necked one, pulled out the empty chair at their table. An order, not an invitation. My mind raced. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to walk away. But something in Dante's expression held me frozen. Not cruelty exactly. Something more complicated. Curiosity, maybe, mixed with something darker. Just for a moment, he added, and it almost sounded gentle. I sat, perching on the edge of the chair like a bird ready to fly. Up close, I could smell him, expensive cologne, something woody and complex, underlaid with cigarette smoke and a hint of gun oil that made my stomach flip. "How long have you worked here?" Dante asked, leaning back in his chair, with the casual confidence of someone who owned every room he entered. 6 months. "You're tired." "Everyone's tired." A slight smile touched his lips, not reaching his eyes. "Not like you. You have that look, the one that says you're counting pennies and coming up short." Anger flared through my humiliation. "Is there a point to this?" The thick-necked man shifted, but Dante raised one finger, barely a movement, and he stilled immediately. The casual display of power made my pulse jump. "I need something," Dante said, his eyes never leaving mine. "And you need money. I can see it in every tense line of your body, in the way you're wearing shoes held together with tape, in how you flinched when you spilled that water like it might cost you your job." My throat tightened. "What do you want?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and the space between us became charged, electric. "Tomorrow night I have a business dinner. Very important people will be there. People who expect me to arrive with a wife." The word hung in the air like smoke. "I don't have a wife," he continued, his voice dropping lower, more intimate. "But I need one. For 4 hours, maybe 5. "You want to hire an escort?" I said flatly. "No." His jaw tightened. "I want someone real, someone who won't be recognized. Someone who looks exactly like what she is. Ordinary, innocent, not part of my world." His eyes burned into mine. "Someone like you." "I'm not." $1,000, he said. The air left my lungs. $1,000. Rent, bills, food, maybe even new shoes. Maybe a night of sleep where I didn't wake up calculating numbers. "Just pretend," Dante continued, reading my silence as consideration. "Wear a dress I provide. Sit beside me. Smile. Be my wife for 1 evening. That's all." "Why me?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Something ancient and weary passed across his face. "Because you look like someone who keeps their promises. Someone with honor." He paused. "And because you're desperate enough to say yes, but honest enough to do it right." The insult and compliment tangled together, and I didn't know whether to slap him or cry. "I don't even know you," I managed. "You don't need to." He pulled out a business card, slid it across the table. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Just a name, Dante Moretti, and a phone number, nothing else. "Think about it. Call me by tomorrow morning. The dinner is at 8. I stared at the card like it might bite me. $1,000, Emma. His voice was velvet and steel. "Cash. You can walk away after and never see me again." The thick-necked man cleared his throat softly. Dante nodded, straightened his jacket, and stood. The other 2 men rose with him, falling into formation like a protective wall. "Your decision," Dante said, looking down at me with those bottomless eyes. "But decide quickly. I don't like to wait." They left, moving through the restaurant like wolves through a field of sheep. Other diners looked up, then quickly away, some instinct telling them not to stare. Mr. Vincenzo himself appeared from the kitchen, his face pale, wringing his hands as he watched them go. I sat there, frozen, the business card burning against my palm. Denise appeared at my elbow. "Holy Mary, Mother of God," she whispered. "Do you know who that was? Should I?" She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard. "Emma, that was Dante Moretti, as in the Moretti family, as in the people who own half this city, and all of its shadows." Her voice shook. "What did he want with you?" I looked down at the card, at the phone number that might solve all my problems or destroy my life. Nothing, I lied, just water. But my hands were shaking, and the card felt like a door I couldn't close once I opened it. $1,000. Pretend to be his wife. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. My instincts screamed. Everything. I slipped the card into my apron pocket, where it rested against my hip like a promise or a threat, and went back to work. But I felt his eyes on me for the rest of the night. Even though he was long gone, felt them like a brand. I didn't sleep that night. The card sat on my nightstand in the studio apartment I could barely afford, glowing like something radioactive in the darkness. Streetlights filtered through the thin curtains, casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. The radiator clanked and hissed, fighting a losing battle against the November cold seeping through the single-pane windows. $1,000. I rolled onto my side, pulling the threadbare comforter up to my chin. The numbers in my bank account scrolled through my mind like a horror movie I couldn't stop watching. Negative $43 after the last check bounced. Rent due in 4 days. The electric company's final notice crumpled in the trash. Mrs. Patterson downstairs needed her medication, and I'd promised to help her pay for it after her son stopped calling. $1,000 could fix everything. For a month. Maybe 2. But Dante Moretti. I'd spent my break Googling him on Denise's phone since mine had been shut off weeks ago. The results were sparse, carefully curated. A few photos at charity galas, always in the background, always flanked by men who looked like they killed people for a living. One article mentioned the Moretti family's import-export business, with the kind of careful language that screamed money laundering. Another discussed their ownership of half the commercial real estate downtown. Nothing concrete, nothing prosecutable. Just shadows and implications, and the kind of power that made people look away. I grabbed my phone, useless for calls, but still functional on Wi-Fi, and stared at his number until my eyes burned. 4 hours, maybe 5. Pretend to be his wife. What kind of business dinner required a fake wife? What kind of man was Dante Moretti that he couldn't just show up alone or find a real date? And why me? A broke waitress with tape on her shoes and grease in her hair. Because you look like someone who keeps their promises. The words haunted me. How had he seen that? How had he looked at me once and known exactly how desperate I was? Exactly what would make me break. Dawn crept through the windows, gray and cold. I hadn't slept at all. By 8 a.m., I'd made my decision. By 8:15, I was regretting it. By 8:30, I was dialing. He answered on the first ring. Emma. Not a question. Like he'd been waiting. Like he knew it would be me. I'll do it, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But I have conditions. A pause. I could hear traffic in the background, the muffled sound of someone speaking Italian. Go on. Half the money up front, cash. And I need to know exactly what I'm walking into. No surprises. Smart girl. Something that might have been approval warmed his voice. My driver will pick you up at 6. He'll bring the first 500. Wear something comfortable. Everything else will be provided. What kind of dinner is this? The kind where appearances matter more than truth. A beat of silence. And Emma? Don't mention this to anyone. Not your coworker, not your landlord, not anyone. The threat was implicit, gentle as a knife between the ribs. I won't. Good. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat on my bed, staring at the phone, wondering what I'd just agreed to. Outside, the city woke up. Car horns, shouted conversations, the rattle of the subway beneath the streets. Normal sounds. A normal day. Except nothing about this was normal. The black SUV arrived at exactly 6 p.m. I'd spent the day in a fugue state, moving through my morning shift at the diner on autopilot, ignoring Denise's questions about my distracted demeanor. When the vehicle pulled up outside my building, sleek, expensive, with windows tinted so dark they looked like pools of oil, my stomach dropped to my feet. The driver emerged first, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face like carved granite and eyes that swept the street with military precision. He opened the back door without a word. I climbed in, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might crack a rib. The interior smelled like leather and money. Soft lighting, seats that probably cost more than my annual income, and a privacy screen separating me from the driver. On the seat beside me sat a garment bag and a small envelope. I opened the envelope with shaking hands, $500 in crisp bills. I counted twice, not quite believing. Rent. This was rent. This was survival. The SUV pulled away from the curb, and I watched my building disappear, wondering if I'd ever see it again. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to a building I'd only seen from the outside. The Meridian, one of those high-rises where apartments started at $5 million and went up from there. The driver opened my door, gestured for me to follow. "Top floor," he said. His first words. Voice like gravel. The elevator was paneled in mirrors and dark wood, so quiet I could hear my own breathing. It rose smoothly, my stomach dropping as the numbers climbed. 35, 40, 45, 50. The doors opened directly into a penthouse. I stepped out into a space that belonged in a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, now glittering with evening lights, modern furniture in shades of gray and black. Art on the walls that probably cost more than my life. Everything sharp angles and clean lines, beautiful and cold. "Emma." Dante emerged from a hallway to my left, and I forgot how to breathe. He wore a different suit, midnight blue, almost black, tailored so perfectly it looked like it had been painted on. His dark hair was slightly damp, suggesting a recent shower. He'd shaved, and without the shadow of stubble, he looked younger, almost vulnerable. Almost. Then he moved closer, and I remembered exactly what he was. "You came," he said, stopping a few feet away. Close enough that I could smell that cologne again, feel the heat radiating from him. "You paid me to." My voice came out smaller than I wanted. A slight smile. "Not yet. That was a deposit. The rest comes after. What if I leave right now? Then you leave." He gestured to the elevator. "Keep the 500. Consider it compensation for your time." I stared at him, searching for the trap. "You'd just let me go? I don't keep people who don't want to be kept." His eyes held mine. "But you won't leave. How do you know?" "Because you need the money, and because you're curious." He moved past me, toward the windows, his shoulder brushing mine. The brief contact sent electricity down my spine. "You want to know what kind of man offers $1,000 for a fake wife? What kind of world I live in?" He was right, and I hated him for it. "The dress is in the bedroom," Dante continued, turning to face me with the city sprawling behind him like a kingdom. "Third door on the left. There's a woman there. Sophia. She'll help you get ready." "I can dress myself." "Not like this, you can't. Not cruel, just factual. These people notice everything, a wrong hem length, jewelry that doesn't match, makeup applied incorrectly. They'll know you don't belong. Sophia will make sure you do." "And what am I supposed to be?" I demanded, anger flaring through my nervousness. "Some trophy you bought?" Dante crossed the space between us in 3 strides. Suddenly he was there, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. This close, I could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes, could count the individual scars on his knuckles. "You," he said softly, dangerously, "are my wife. You're intelligent, graceful, and completely devoted to me. You've been by my side for 2 years. You know when to speak and when to stay quiet. You smile at the right moments and never, ever show fear." His hand came up, hovering near my face but not touching. "Can you do that, Emma?" I forced myself not to flinch away. "For $1,000? I can be anyone you want." "No." His jaw tightened. "Be yourself. Just a version of yourself that belongs in my world. I don't belong in your world. I know." Something shifted in his expression, almost like regret. "That's exactly why this works." He stepped back, breaking the spell, and gestured toward the hallway. "Sophia's waiting. We leave in an hour." Sophia turned out to be a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and gentle hands. She took one look at me and tisked like a disappointed grandmother. "So thin," she muttered in accented English, circling me like I was a mannequin. "And these hands. You work too hard, Bambina. I'm a waitress. Not tonight." She unzipped the garment bag with a flourish. The dress inside made me gasp. Midnight blue silk, the same color as Dante's suit. Simple lines, elegant, with a neckline that was modest but suggested everything. No jewelry, no embellishment. Just expensive fabric and expert tailoring. "He chose this?" I whispered, running my fingers over the silk. Sophia's expression softened. "He has good eye, always has." She helped me out of my jeans and t-shirt with brisk efficiency, no room for modesty. Arms up. The dress slid over my skin like water, cool and impossibly soft. Sophia zipped it up, adjusted the shoulders, and stepped back with a satisfied nod. "Now sit. We fix your face." The next 45 minutes passed in a blur of makeup brushes and hairpins. Sophia worked in silence, occasionally humming under her breath. I watched myself transform in the mirror. My features sharpened, defined. My skin glowing with products that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. My hair, usually pulled back in a messy bun, fell in soft waves over one shoulder. When Sophia finished, I barely recognized myself. "Perfect," she declared. "You look like you belong to him." The words sent a chill through me. Not with him. To him. Shoes. Sophia produced a box containing heels that looked like art, strappy, elegant, the kind I'd only ever seen on red carpets. They fit perfectly. Of course they did. Dante had somehow known my size. A knock on the door made us both turn. Dante entered without waiting for permission, and I watched his expression shift as he took me in. For a moment, just a heartbeat, something raw flashed across his face. Hunger, maybe. Or recognition, like he was seeing someone else in my features. Then it was gone, replaced by that careful mask. "Good," he said simply, but his voice was rougher than before. Sophia beamed, patting my shoulder. "She's ready." "Emma?" Dante extended his hand. "It's time." I stood, wobbling slightly in the heels. His hand was warm, calloused, his grip firm but not painful as he steadied me. "Remember," he said quietly, his breath ghosting across my temple, "you're my wife. You love me. And no matter what you see or hear tonight, you trust me completely." The words should have terrified me. Instead, standing there in silk and diamonds I didn't own, my hand in his, I felt something else entirely, like I was stepping off a cliff, like there was no going back. "Okay," I whispered. Dante's fingers tightened around mine for just a moment. Then he smiled. A real smile, devastating and dangerous, and led me toward whatever waited below. The restaurant was the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu. We arrived in a different SUV, this one even more luxurious, with 2 additional vehicles flanking us like a motorcade. I watched through the tinted windows as we pulled up to a building I'd passed 100 times but never imagined entering. Cristallo. 3 Michelin stars, a 6-month waiting list for normal people. But Dante Moretti wasn't normal people. The door opened, and he stepped out first, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. Then he turned, extending his hand to me with a look that said, "Play your part." I took it, letting him help me out, and immediately understood why Sophia had spent so much time on my appearance. Cameras flashed, not paparazzi. This was more discreet, but photographers stationed strategically, capturing arrivals. Other couples emerged from expensive cars, dripping in jewels and designer labels, their faces familiar from news articles and society pages, old money and new power mixing in the cool November air. Dante's hand moved to the small of my back, possessive and warm through the thin silk. "Smile," he murmured against my ear. "You're happy to be here." I smiled. It felt like a mask. We walked through doors held open by staff who looked like they'd been hired for their ability to be invisible. Inside, the restaurant was all dim lighting and hushed conversations, the soft clink of crystal against china providing a soundtrack to wealth. A massive chandelier dominated the center of the room, casting prismatic light across walls decorated with modern art. "Mr. Moretti." The maitre d' appeared like he'd materialized from shadows. "Your party is already seated. This way, please." Dante's fingers flexed against my back. A warning or reassurance, I couldn't tell. We followed the maitre d' through the main dining room, past tables where conversation stopped as we passed. I felt eyes on us, cataloging, judging, pricing every element of my appearance. You belong here, I told myself. You're his wife. You've done this 100 times. But my heart hammered against my ribs, calling me a liar. We were led to a private room at the back, separated from the main restaurant by frosted glass doors. The maitre d' opened them with a flourish, and we stepped into a world I didn't understand. 6 people sat around a table that could have accommodated 12, all men except for one woman who dripped diamonds like she was made of them. They looked up as we entered, and I felt Dante's entire body shift beside me. Subtle, but suddenly he was larger, more commanding, a wolf among wolves. Dante. An older man at the head of the table stood, arms spread wide. Silver hair, expensive suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. Finally, we were beginning to think you'd forgotten us. Marco. Dante's voice was warm, friendly, completely at odds with the tension I felt radiating from him. Never. Just ensuring my wife looked perfect for such distinguished company. All eyes turned to me. I wanted to run. Wanted to tear off these expensive clothes and shoes and disappear back into my invisible life where nobody looked at me like I was a puzzle to solve. Instead, I smiled. Stepped forward as Dante guided me. Let him introduce me. Gentlemen, Signora Castellano. This is my wife, Emma. The woman, Signora Castellano, stood with fluid grace, her gaze sweeping over me like a blade. She was beautiful in that ageless way money could buy, her dress probably worth more than my entire building. When she smiled, it was all teeth. Emma, she purred, her accent thick and musical. How lovely. I didn't know Dante had married. Recently, Dante said smoothly, pulling out my chair. We prefer to keep our private life private. I sat, hyper-aware of every movement, every breath. Dante settled beside me, his thigh pressing against mine under the table. Another warning to stay close, stay alert. The introductions blurred together. Marco Castellano, the patriarch, clearly important. His sons, Antonio and Luca, both watching me with different flavors of suspicion. 2 other men whose names I forgot immediately, their faces hard and calculating. And Signora Castellano, who kept looking at me like she could see through every lie. So, Emma. She leaned forward, candlelight catching the massive emerald at her throat. How did you and Dante meet? The question hung in the air like a trap. I felt Dante's hand find my knee under the table, squeezing gently. A reminder that we'd never discussed this. That I was on my own. At a restaurant, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I was working, he was dining. I spilled water on his table. Truth, I'd learned, was always easier to remember than lies. Dante's fingers tightened on my knee, surprise, maybe, that I'd chosen honesty. How charming. Signora Castellano's smile sharpened. A waitress. How modern of you, Dante. I prefer authenticity to pedigree, Dante replied, his voice taking on an edge that made the temperature drop. Emma is exactly what she appears to be. No games, no hidden agendas. His eyes found Marco's, a rare quality in our world. Something passed between the 2 men, some understanding I wasn't privy to. Marco nodded slowly, sat back in his chair. Indeed, he murmured, honesty is valuable. The servers arrived with the first course, and conversation shifted to business, carefully coded, never explicit. But I wasn't stupid. They were discussing territories, percentages, shipments. Words that sounded legitimate but carried weight that made my stomach turn. I ate because not eating would draw attention. The food was exquisite and tasted like ash. Dante played his part perfectly. The devoted husband, occasionally touching my hand, refilling my wine, including me in conversations with a look or gesture. But I could feel the tension in him, coiled tight beneath the expensive suit. This wasn't just a dinner. This was a negotiation, and I was somehow part of the currency. Your wife is very quiet, Dante. Antonio leaned forward, his eyes too sharp, too knowing. Does she always let you do the talking? Emma speaks when she has something worth saying. Dante's voice was pleasant, but his hand moved to my shoulder, fingers pressing into my collarbone. Possessive, protective. Unlike some people, Antonio's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The dinner dragged on for hours. Course after course, wine flowing freely, conversations circling topics I couldn't quite grasp. I played my part, smiled at the right moments, laughed softly at jokes I didn't find funny, let Dante's hands on me tell a story of intimacy and ownership, but beneath the table, my hands were fists in my lap, nails digging crescents into my palms. Finally, Marco stood, raising his glass. "To new partnerships," he announced, his gaze locked on Dante. "And to family. May we always know where loyalties lie." Everyone stood, raised their glasses. The crystal caught the light, reflecting fractures across the walls. "To family," Dante echoed, his arm sliding around my waist, pulling me against his side, "and to trust." We drank, and I tasted metal beneath the wine. The SUV ride back was silent. Dante sat beside me, staring out the window at the city sliding past. His jaw was tight, one hand flexed and unflexed in his lap, the only sign of whatever was churning beneath his controlled exterior. "You did well," he finally said, not looking at me. What was that? My voice came out sharper than I intended. What was I really there for? Now he turned, those dark eyes finding mine in the dim interior. Proof. Of what? That I'm stable, settled, that I have something to lose. He shifted, facing me fully. Marco's been circling my territory for months. Tonight was about showing him I'm not the reckless son he remembers, that I've built something worth protecting. So I was a prop. You were a shield. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek before I could flinch away. And you were perfect. The touch sent electricity through my skin. I jerked back, pressing against the door. Don't. Don't what? He leaned closer, and suddenly the spacious SUV felt tiny. Don't tell you the truth? That Marco and his vultures are less likely to move against me if they think I have a weakness they can exploit? I'm not your weakness. No. His eyes burned into mine. But they think you are, which means I need to keep you safe until they stop thinking about it. The words took a moment to land. What? They'll investigate you, Emma. They'll find out you're exactly what you appear to be. A broke waitress from the wrong side of town. They'll wonder why I married you. They'll look for angles. Ice flooded my veins. You said one night, 4 hours, maybe 5. I did. He sat back, running a hand through his hair. The first gesture of anything like frustration I'd seen from him. And then Signora Castellano started asking questions, and Antonio looked at you like you were a puzzle he wanted to solve, and I realized one night isn't going to be enough. No. I shook my head, panic rising. We had a deal. The deal was $1,000 for pretending to be my wife at a dinner. You did that. I'll pay you. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, held it out. 500, as promised. I stared at the money like it might bite me, but if you take it and disappear, they'll know it was fake. They'll know I lied, and then they'll make their move, and a lot of people will die. His voice dropped, went soft and deadly, including you, probably. Antonio doesn't like loose ends. My mouth went dry. You're saying I have to keep pretending. I'm saying you need to stay where I can protect you until this settles. A few weeks, maybe a month. A month? The word came out strangled. I have a life, Dante. A job. Rent. Which you can't pay. He held my gaze. I'll cover your rent. Your bills. Pay you $5,000 a week to stay in my penthouse, where Marco's people can see you coming and going, where it looks real. $5,000 a week. The number was absurd. Impossible. More money than I'd made in 6 months of double shifts and bleeding feet. Why? I whispered. Why me? There have to be 100 women who do this better, who actually know your world. Dante was quiet for a long moment, staring at his scarred knuckles. When he spoke, his voice was different, rawer, like he'd dropped some mask I hadn't even known he was wearing. You look like someone I lost, someone who mattered. He met my eyes, and for the first time, I saw real pain there. And I need Marco to believe you matter to me, which means I need to believe it too, at least a little. The confession hung between us, fragile and dangerous. What happened to her? I asked. She trusted the wrong person. His jaw tightened, and I wasn't there to stop it. The SUV pulled up outside his building. Through the window, I could see doormen waiting, security cameras tracking our arrival, a gilded cage with the door standing open. Dante held out the envelope again. Take the money. Walk away. I'll handle the fallout. I looked at the cash, then at him. At the exhaustion beneath his control, the weight he carried like armor. At the genuine fear in his eyes when he mentioned Antonio and loose ends. 5,000 a week, rent paid, bills cleared. Maybe enough to save Mrs. Patterson's medication fund, maybe enough to actually sleep at night. But more than that, the certainty that walking away meant danger I couldn't outrun, that I'd stepped into something that didn't let go easily. How do I know you'll keep me safe? I asked. You don't. Brutally honest. But I've never failed to protect what's mine. And for the next few weeks, Emma, you're mine. The possessive pronoun should have terrified me. Instead, sitting in the dark with this dangerous man and his dangerous money and his promise of safety, I felt something else. Like maybe being owned wasn't the worst thing that could happen to someone with nothing left to lose. Okay, I whispered. A month. But then I'm gone. Dante's hand moved to my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. A month, he agreed. But his eyes said he was already planning to make sure I never wanted to leave. The penthouse became my prison and sanctuary in equal measure. I woke the next morning in a bedroom larger than my entire apartment, wrapped in sheets that probably cost more than my security deposit. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawling below like a kingdom I'd never be part of. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed back. The deal. The dinner. Dante's scarred hands and darker promises. You're mine. I found clothes in the closet, my size expensive, tags still attached. Jeans that actually fit, soft sweaters, undergarments in silk and lace that made me blush. Everything I owned could fit in a backpack, but Dante had filled an entire walk-in closet overnight. The control of it should have terrified me. Instead, I pulled on jeans and a cashmere sweater, let myself feel warm for the first time in months, and hated how good it felt to be taken care of. Dante sat in the living room when I emerged, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian, but his eyes tracked me as I moved toward the kitchen. Those eyes never stopped watching, cataloging, claiming. He ended the call as I poured coffee from a machine that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. Sleep well? His voice was neutral, but something heated lurked beneath. Like the dead. I took a sip, nearly moaned. Even the coffee was better here. What happens now? Now you live here. Publicly. He stood, moved toward me with that predatory grace. Marco's people are already watching. They saw us arrive together last night. They need to keep seeing us together, so I'm a prisoner. You're protected. He stopped close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the shadow of stubble along his jaw. There's a difference. Is there? I met his eyes, refusing to back down. Because it feels like I traded one cage for another. At least my apartment had locks I controlled. Something flickered across his face. Respect, maybe. You want to leave? I want to understand what I've walked into. I set down the coffee cup, crossed my arms. Last night, those men, they weren't discussing legitimate business. And Antonio looked at me like I was already dead. Antonio's a problem I'm handling. By using me as bait. By showing him you're not worth touching. Dante's hand came up, fingers trailing along my jaw before I could stop him. The touch was possessive, claiming, and it sent unwanted heat through my body. No one touches what belongs to me. Not Marco's sons. Not his soldiers. Not anyone. I jerked away from his hand. I don't belong to you. For the next month you do. His voice dropped, went dangerously soft. And that means you follow my rules. You don't leave without security. You don't talk to anyone about our arrangement. And when we're in public, he stepped closer, backing me against the counter. You look at me like you love me, like you'd die for me. Can you do that, Emma? My heart hammered against my ribs. This close, I could see the amber flecks in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from him. He was beautiful and terrifying, and every instinct screamed at me to run, but $5,000 a week. Safety, warmth, coffee that tasted like heaven. Yes, I whispered. His eyes darkened. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment, and he stepped back. Get dressed. Something nice. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. We have a lunch meeting. Marco wants to introduce you to his wife properly. Another performance? Every moment of your life now is a performance. He moved toward the hallway, paused at the entrance. And Emma, you're already better at it than you know. Sophia arrived an hour later, armed with makeup and opinions. You hold tension here, she said, fingers pressing into my shoulders as she worked on my hair. In your neck, your back, like you're always waiting for a blow. Old habit. I watched her in the mirror, this woman who seemed to know Dante in ways I couldn't fathom. How long have you worked for him? Since he was a boy. Her hands were gentle, efficient. I knew his mother, raised him after she passed. The casual mention of death made my stomach twist. What was she like? Sophia's expression softened, beautiful, kind, too good for this world. She met my eyes in the reflection. You remind him of her. The way you look, the shape of your face, is why he chose you. The confession landed like a stone in still water. I'm a replacement? No, Bambina. You're a memory he's trying to protect. She pinned the last section of my hair, stepped back. His mother died because his father was careless with her safety. Dante won't make the same mistake. I'm not his wife. Not really. Maybe not. Sophia's smile was sad, but he'll protect you like you are, and that... She touched my shoulder. That can be more dangerous than any enemy. The lunch was at Marco's estate. We drove through gates that looked designed to repel armies, past manicured gardens and fountains that belonged in Versailles. The house, calling it a house felt wrong. It was a compound, loomed ahead, all stone and security cameras and men with guns barely concealed beneath their jackets. Dante's hand found mine as we walked to the door. Stay close. Don't drink anything I don't pour, and if anyone asks you to go anywhere alone, refuse. You think they'd hurt me here? I think Marco respects power, and Antonio respects nothing. His fingers tightened. So yes, they might test you. Test me through you. The door opened before we could knock. Antonio stood there, all sharp smiles and calculating eyes. He'd changed since last night. More casual, more dangerous somehow in jeans and a fitted shirt that showed the gun at his hip. Dante, Emma, he said my name like it was a joke. Please come in. My mother is eager to see you again. The house was a monument to wealth and taste. Art that belonged in museums, furniture that looked antique and priceless, every surface gleaming with care. But underneath the beauty, I felt something else. Danger. Like the house itself was predatory. Signora Castellano waited in a sitting room that overlooked the gardens. She wore white, pristine, expensive, and smiled as we entered. Emma, darling, come sit with me. She patted the sofa beside her. Let the men discuss their boring business. You and I should get to know each other. Dante's hand flexed around mine. A warning. Then he let go, moving toward where Marco stood by the windows. I was alone with the predator and Pearls. I sat, keeping my spine straight, my hands folded in my lap. Everything Sophia had taught me about posture and poise. You're very beautiful, Signora Castellano said, pouring tea from a service that probably cost more than a car. But beauty fades. What else do you offer my friend Dante? The question was a trap, obviously. I took the teacup she offered, bought myself time with a careful sip. Honesty, I finally said. I'm exactly what I appear to be. No hidden agendas. No family politics. How refreshing. Her smile sharpened. And what does Dante give you in return? Security? Money? A life you could never have afforded? Heat crept up my neck. He gives me respect. Respect. She laughed, light and cruel. Is that what you call it? My dear, Dante Moretti doesn't respect women. He collects them, uses them. And when he's done, she waved a hand, he discards them. You don't know him. I've known him since he was born. She leaned closer, and I could smell her perfume, expensive, cloying. I knew his mother, poor Maria. She thought Lorenzo loved her too, thought their marriage meant something, right up until he put a bullet in her head for talking to the wrong people. The air left my lungs. Dante had said his mother died, not that his father killed her. That's not true? Signora Castellano's eyes glittered. Ask him, ask Dante how his sainted mother died. Ask him what he did to his father in return. She sat back, sipping her tea like we were discussing the weather. The men in this family don't love, Emma. They own, they possess. And when you're no longer useful, enough. Dante's voice cut across the room like a blade. I turned to find him standing behind us, his face a mask of controlled rage. Marco looked amused, Antonio openly smiling. We were just having girl talk, Signora Castellano said innocently, sharing family stories. My wife doesn't need to hear your version of history. Dante extended his hand to me. Emma, we're leaving. I stood on shaking legs, took his hand. It was warm, solid, the only real thing in a room full of beautiful lies. So soon? Marco asked. We haven't even eaten. I've lost my appetite. Dante's arm wrapped around my waist, protective and possessive. Thank you for the invitation. Next time, perhaps your wife will remember her manners. We left through a house gone silent, past men who watched with predator eyes, into sunlight that felt like a reprieve. The SUV was waiting. Dante bundled me inside, climbed in after, and the moment the door shut, his control cracked. What did she say to you? I stared at my hands, still shaking. That your father killed your mother, that you killed him in return. Silence. Heavy and suffocating. Is it true? I whispered. Yes. The single word hung between us. I was 17, Dante continued, his voice flat, emotionless. My father decided my mother knew too much, that she was a liability. He shot her in our kitchen while I was at school. Made it look like a robbery, his hands clenched into fists. I found her when I came home, and I spent the next 3 years planning exactly how he would die. I looked at him. This man who'd bought me for $1,000, who'd wrapped me in silk and promises. Did you do it? Kill him? I put the gun in his hand. His eyes met mine, dark and ancient. Made him pull the trigger himself, seemed fitting. I should have been horrified, should have demanded he let me out, should have run screaming back to my crumbling apartment and my invisible life. Instead, I saw a 17-year-old boy finding his mother's body, saw him become the monster everyone expected, because monsters were the only ones who survived. I'm sorry, I said. Dante blinked, like the words were foreign. For what? That you had to become this. I gestured at him. The expensive suit, the scars, the weight of violence he carried like armor, that no one protected you. Something cracked in his expression. He looked away, jaw working, and when he spoke, his voice was rough. I don't need your pity, Emma. Good. Because I'm not giving it to you. I shifted closer, didn't let him retreat, but I understand now. Why you need this to look real. Why you need Marco to think you have something to lose. Because I do. He turned back, and the naked vulnerability in his eyes stole my breath. I have you. And they'll use that. They'll hurt you to hurt me, just like my father hurt my mother. Then we make sure they can't. My hand found his, laced our fingers together. We make this so convincing that when the month ends, they won't question it. They'll believe you moved on, that I wasn't important enough to keep. And what if... He stopped, shook his head. What if what? What if I don't want the month to end? The confession came out strangled. What if I want to keep you? My heart stopped, restarted, stopped again. Dante, I know, it's not real. You're here for money, for safety. I bought you. His hand came up, cupped my face with a gentleness that destroyed me. But every time I look at you, I see her. I see my mother's smile, her kindness, and I think, maybe I can keep this one safe. Maybe I can do it right this time. Tears burned my eyes. I'm not your second chance, I know. His thumb traced my cheekbone, catching a tear that escaped. But you could be my first choice, if you wanted. After the month. When you're free to leave, don't. I pulled back, wiped my eyes. Don't make promises about after. Let's just survive the now. He nodded slowly, dropped his hand. But something had shifted between us. Something dangerous and tender that made my chest ache. The SUV pulled up to his building. We rode the elevator in silence, walked into the penthouse like ghosts. I need to make some calls, Dante said, already pulling out his phone. There's food in the kitchen. Sophia will be back later too. Dante. He stopped, turned. I crossed the space between us, stood on my toes, and pressed my lips to his cheek. Brief, chaste, terrifying. Thank you, I whispered. For telling me the truth. I felt him freeze, felt his breath catch. Then his arm wrapped around my waist, hauling me against him, and his mouth found mine. The kiss was nothing like I'd expected. Not gentle, not patient. It was desperate and claiming and tasted like violence and need. His hand tangled in my hair, angling my head, and I opened for him because there was no other choice. He kissed me like he was drowning and I was air. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. I shouldn't have done that, he said. No, I agreed. You shouldn't have. Are you going to run? I should have. Every rational thought screamed at me to grab my things and flee, but I was tired of running, tired of being invisible. And Dante, dangerous, broken Dante, saw me in a way no one ever had. No, I whispered. I'm not running. His eyes blazed. Then understand this, Emma. You might think this is temporary, that you'll leave in a month and forget me. But I'm a possessive man. And now that I've tasted you, his thumb traced my swollen lip. I'm never letting you go. The threat should have terrified me. Instead, wrapped in his arms with the city glittering below, I felt something else entirely. Like maybe being possessed wasn't the same as being trapped. Like maybe, for the first time in my life, I'd found somewhere I belonged, even if that somewhere was in the arms of a monster. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a haze of performances and stolen moments. Days followed a pattern. Breakfast with Dante while he fielded calls in Italian. Afternoons where Sophia coached me on everything from wine selection to which families controlled which neighborhoods. Evenings spent at dinners or galas or charity events where I smiled and played the devoted wife. And nights. Nights where Dante would kiss me against walls, in elevators, in the back of SUVs, each touch more desperate than the last before pulling away with iron control and retreating to his own bedroom. We never spoke about the kiss in the penthouse, but it hung between us, a promise and a threat. I learned his world through observation, learned that the thick-necked man from Vincenzo's was named Carlo, and he'd taken a bullet for Dante 3 years ago. Learned that the import-export business was actually a network of legitimate companies hiding streams of less legitimate money. Learned that Dante owned half the city council and most of the police force, that his power was built on fear and loyalty in equal measure. I also learned smaller things, that he took his coffee black with 1 sugar, that he had nightmares that left him pacing the penthouse at 3 a.m., that he played piano, beautifully, heartbreakingly, when he thought I was asleep, that the scar on his temple came from his father's ring, a parting gift before Dante made him pull that trigger. I was learning Dante Moretti, piece by scarred piece, and the knowledge felt dangerous because I was starting to care. You're distracted, Sophia said one afternoon, pinning my hair for yet another event. Your eyes are soft when you look at him now. That's good for the performance. Bad for your heart. I know what this is, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Do you? She met my eyes in the mirror, because he looks at you the same way. And Dante, he doesn't do anything halfway. If he's decided you're his, Bambina, you are his. The question is whether you want to be. Before I could answer, Dante appeared in the doorway, stunning in a tuxedo. Ready? He asked, and his eyes tracked over me like a physical touch. I wore emerald green tonight, a dress that hugged every curve and made me feel like someone else entirely. Someone who belonged in his world. Ready, I confirmed. Tonight was Marco's anniversary party, the biggest gathering yet, with families from across the coast attending. Dante had been tense for days, increasing my security, drilling me on names and faces. Something was coming. I could feel it in the air, electric and dangerous. The Castellano estate was transformed. Thousands of lights, an orchestra, champagne flowing like water. Women in gowns that cost more than cars, men with dead eyes and expensive watches. Power and violence wrapped in silk. Dante kept me close, his hand never leaving my body. To anyone watching, we were the picture of newlywed devotion. His lips at my temple, whispering translations of conversations in Italian, my hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath expensive fabric. We danced together, moved through the crowd as one unit, and I wondered when the pretending had stopped feeling like pretending. Emma Moretti. Antonio appeared beside us, champagne in hand and malice in his smile. You look radiant. Marriage agrees with you. Thank you, I said carefully, feeling Dante tense beside me. My mother told me she had such an interesting conversation with you about family history. Antonio's eyes glittered with something cruel. Did Dante ever tell you what happened to his last girlfriend? Before you? Ice flooded my veins. Dante's hand tightened on my waist. A warning or a plea, I couldn't tell. There was no one before Emma, Dante said flatly. No? Antonio laughed. What about Sofia Benedetti? Beautiful girl. You were quite taken with her, as I recall. Right up until someone put 3 bullets in her chest and left her in the harbor. The world tilted. I looked at Dante, saw his jaw locked, saw fury and pain warring in his expression. Sofia's death had nothing to do with me, Dante ground out. Didn't it? Antonio leaned closer, his breath reeking of alcohol. She knew too much, talked too much, and suddenly she was fish food. His eyes slid to me. I wonder if your wife knows how dangerous it is to be loved by Dante Moretti. Enough. Dante's voice cracked like a whip. You want to play games, Antonio? Let's play. But leave my wife out of it. Oh, but she's the best part of the game. Antonio's hand shot out, gripping my wrist before Dante could stop him. Don't you see? Your father killed your mother to protect his business. And you'll kill her too, eventually. It's in your blood. Dante moved faster than I'd ever seen him move. One moment Antonio held my wrist. The next he was on the floor. Dante's gun pressed to his temple, the party going silent around us. Touch her again, Dante whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, and I'll show you exactly what's in my blood. Dante. Marco's voice cut through the tension. He stood at the edge of the crowd, flanked by his soldiers, his face carved from stone. This is a party, my anniversary. Put the gun away. For a terrible moment I thought Dante would pull the trigger. I saw it in his eyes, the desire, the rage, the culmination of years of hatred. Then his gaze found mine, and something shifted. He lowered the gun, stepped back, extended his hand to me. We're leaving, he announced to the silent room. Marco, thank you for your hospitality. But if your son touches my wife again, I'll start a war neither of us can afford. He led me through the crowd, past shocked faces and whispered conversations, into the night air. The SUV was waiting, Carlo at the wheel. Engines already running. We climbed inside, and the moment the door shut, Dante exploded. God damn it! He slammed his fist into the seat once, twice. I should have killed him. Should have put a bullet in his skull right there. But you didn't. My voice was shaking but steady. You didn't because of me. He turned, eyes wild. He threatened you. He put his hands on you. And you stopped him. I reached for his hand, pried it open, pressed my palm to his. You protected me without starting a war. That's control, Dante. That's strength. You don't understand. He pulled me closer, until I was practically in his lap, his hands framing my face. Sofia, what Antonio said, was she real? Yes. Raw honesty, painful and immediate. 3 years ago, she was sweet and kind and wanted nothing to do with my world. I thought I could protect her. Thought if I kept her separate, kept her secret, she'd be safe. His voice cracked. I found her body 2 months after we started dating. 3 bullets. A message from my father that nothing I cared about was safe. Tears burned my eyes. I'm so sorry. I swore I'd never do it again, never put someone innocent in danger. His thumbs traced my cheekbones, catching tears. And then I saw you, with your taped shoes and tired eyes and that spark of defiance. And I thought, maybe if I kept you close, kept you visible, made you part of my world instead of hiding you from it, maybe you'd survive. Is that all I am? I whispered. Your second chance at Sophia? No. The word was fierce, absolute. You're nothing like her. Sophia was gentle, passive. She would have let Antonio touch her without fighting back. But you, his lips curved in something like awe. You would have broken his fingers if I hadn't gotten there first. You're strong, Emma. Stronger than any of us. I'm terrified. Good. Fear keeps you alive. He pressed his forehead to mine, breathing me in. But I need you to understand something. This month we agreed on, it's not enough. It was never going to be enough. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying don't leave. His voice broke on the words. When the 30 days are up, when Marco stops watching, when you're free to go, don't leave me. Stay. Not as a wife I bought. As my wife. Real. Forever. Dante. I love you. The confession tumbled out desperately. I know it's insane. I know it's been 2 weeks. But I've loved you since you spilled water on my table and looked at me like I was just a man, not a monster. I love your strength and your stubbornness, and the way you see through every lie I tell. And I know. His voice dropped to a whisper. I know I don't deserve you, but I'm asking anyway. Stay. The words hung between us, fragile and terrifying and more real than anything I'd ever heard. I thought about my old life, the grease-stained uniform, the apartment with broken heat, the crushing weight of poverty that made every day a battle. I thought about being invisible, being nothing, being one unexpected expense away from homelessness. Then I thought about the last 2 weeks. Waking up warm, coffee that tasted like heaven, Sophia's gentle hands in my hair, Carlo's gruff protection, and Dante. Dangerous, broken Dante, looking at me like I was worth protecting, worth fighting for. Worth loving. I'm not her, I said carefully. I'm not going to be some trophy you keep locked away. If I stay as your equal, your partner. Hope flared in his eyes. Yes. And I want to know everything. No more secrets about your business, your enemies, your past. If I'm in danger, I deserve to know why. Done. And I swallowed hard. You have to promise me something. If this goes wrong, if loving me puts me in danger like it did Sophia, you have to let me go. Don't make me a casualty of your war. His hands tightened on my face. I will never let you go. Never. Anyone who comes for you will have to go through me first. And Emma, his voice went hard, lethal. I'm very difficult to kill. That's not reassuring. It should be. He smiled. And for the first time since I'd met him, it reached his eyes. Real joy, bright and devastating. Because it means I'll be here, protecting you, loving you, for as long as you'll have me. I looked at this man who'd bought me for $1,000 and offered me the world, who'd shown me his scars and trusted me with his truth, who looked at me like I was precious instead of invisible. Okay, I whispered. I'll stay. His kiss stole my breath, my sanity, my last remaining defenses. He kissed me like a drowning man finding shore. And I kissed him back with equal desperation, equal need. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his smile was blinding. Marry me, he said. We're already married. Fake married. No. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box that made my heart stop. Inside was a ring. Simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light and fractured it into rainbows. Marry me for real. Not because I'm paying you. Not because you need protection, but because you want to. Because you love me too. Did I love him? This monster who played piano at 3 a.m. and killed his father for his mother and looked at me like I was salvation? I barely knew him. 2 weeks was nothing. But I knew the important things. I knew he'd protected me without hesitation. Knew he'd trusted me with his darkest secrets. Knew that when Antonio touched me, Dante had been ready to start a war. Yes, I said, and watched his face transform. Yes, I'll marry you. For real this time. He slipped the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. And kissed me again. Softer now. reverent. "Thank you," he whispered against my lips, "for seeing past the monster." "You're not a monster," I corrected. "You're just a man who was forced to become one. But with me," I touched his face, felt him lean into my palm, "you can be just Dante. No masks, no performance. Just you, just me," he repeated, like he was testing the words. Then he pulled me close, tucked my head under his chin, and I felt his heartbeat slow, steady. Sure, we stayed like that as Carlo drove us home, wrapped in each other, the ring on my finger catching the light. And for the first time since my parents died, leaving me alone and broke in a city that didn't care, I felt safe. Not because I had money now, or a roof that didn't leak, or shoes without tape, but because I had someone who would burn the world down before letting it touch me. The wedding happened 3 months later. Not the fake one from the dinner, but a real ceremony in a cathedral that had married Moretti's for generations. Sophia cried through the whole thing. Carlo smiled for the first time I'd ever seen. Marco Castellano attended with his wife, their tentative truce with Dante solidified by my presence, proof that he was stable, committed, not the reckless soldier they remembered. Antonio wasn't invited. He disappeared a week after the anniversary party, and when I asked Dante about it, he'd simply said, "Some problems solve themselves." I didn't push. There were things I didn't need to know. I wore white. Real white this time, not borrowed silk. And when Dante lifted my veil, the look in his eyes made me forget every doubt, every fear, every moment I'd questioned this choice. "I love you, Emma Moretti," he said, loud enough for the whole church to hear, "and I will spend every day of my life proving I'm worthy of you." "You already are," I whispered back. Our kiss sealed it, made it real, transformed me from a broke waitress with taped shoes into the wife of the most dangerous man in the city. But that night, in the penthouse that was now our home, when Dante carried me over the threshold and set me down gently, reverently, I wasn't thinking about his power or his danger or his darkness. I was thinking about how he touched me like I was precious, how he whispered my name like a prayer, how he loved me not despite my ordinariness but because of it. "No regrets?" he asked, fingers working the buttons of my dress with patient care. "None," I said honestly. "You?" "Only that I didn't find you sooner." He pressed a kiss to my shoulder, my neck, my jaw, that I wasted years being alone when you were out there, waiting for me to spill water at your table. I laughed, pulling him down to me. "Best accident of my life." "Mine too," he agreed. And as he loved me through the night, tender and fierce and completely present, I thought about fairy tales, about how they always warned that monsters couldn't be saved, that beauty couldn't tame the beast, but maybe that was the wrong lesson. Maybe the real story was that monsters became monsters because no one saw them as men, that all they needed was someone brave enough to look past the scars and the violence and see the person underneath. I'd been broke and desperate when Dante Moretti offered me $1,000 to pretend to be his wife. I'd said yes because I needed to survive. But somewhere between the performance and the truth, between the fear and the trust, between the fake marriage and the real one, I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for. A home. A purpose. A love that was messy and complicated and dangerous and absolutely real. "Emma," Dante whispered against my skin, hours later, when the city slept and we were wrapped in each other. "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying. For choosing me. For making me believe I could be more than what they made me." I kissed him, soft and sweet. "You were always more. You just needed someone to remind you." He smiled, that devastating, genuine smile that was mine alone, and pulled me closer. Outside, the city glittered with its millions of stories, its thousands of people searching for connection in the darkness. But in here, in this moment, there was only us, a mafia boss and a waitress, a monster, and the woman who taught him how to be human again. And a love that started with a lie but became the truest thing either of us had ever known. I'd answered his question, pretend to be his wife for $1,000, but I'd never expected my answer would change both our lives forever. In the end, it wasn't the money that mattered. It wasn't the protection or the luxury or the escape from poverty. It was the way Dante looked at me every morning like I was a miracle, the way he trusted me with his darkness and let me love him anyway. The way we built something real from a foundation of lies. I'd been invisible my whole life. But Dante Moretti saw me, all of me, and he loved what he found. That was worth more than any amount of